Hi, welcome to the SBP Podcast Mobile Filmmaking, the voice of mobile film. I'm your host, Susie Botello, and you're listening to episode 80. Whoa, how did we get here? Cinematography and choreography. How well do these play together when making a film that evolves around dance? Oh, and by the way, how can a smartphone camera make it easier on a camera person than a full-sized camera? Well, these are part of the discussion that my guest and I dove into in depth in this episode of the SBP podcast. Jamiel Laurence won second place at the International Mobile Film Festival in San Diego last month. His film, Benched, was a dance performance of isolation shot in a park in Glasgow. The film was choreographed by mobile filmmaker Jamiel Laurence, a dancer himself. I think you will find a conversation that connects mobile filmmaking to the art of dance and storytelling in film pretty interesting. By the way, we made an announcement regarding the rules for the 2021 International Mobile Film Festival in San Diego. The feature film length was extended from 90 minutes to 120 minutes. That's 2 full hours. The open call for films begins June 19th. You can go to our website, internationalmobilefilmfestival.com, and get all the details on the rules page from the menu.
Hi everyone, it's Cara Rust from Cape Town, South Africa. I am the director of English Made Simple. I submitted my comedy short to the International Mobile Film Festival this year, and it's just been an incredible experience. Susie is so supportive and their social media presence is incredible. I would suggest to any mobile filmmaker to submit their film to this festival. It has just been amazing.
Welcome to the SBP Podcast, Mobile Filmmaking. I am here with the second prize winner of the International Mobile Film Festival in San Diego, Jamiel Laurence, who won second prize for his film shot with the iPhone X, Benched. And we're going to now go straight to Jamiel. Jamiel, how are you?
I'm good. I'm okay. It's early morning for me, nighttime for you, so separated by time and space.
Speaking of space, where exactly are you right now?
So I am at home in Glasgow, in Scotland, in the UK.
Wonderful. Jamiel, before we talk about you, because you have a very interesting and amazing background, and I actually I'm pretty excited to share what it is that you do because it takes a lot of persistence and focus to do what you do. But before I go there, tell everybody a little bit about your film Benched and why you filmed it with the iPhone.
Sure. So Benched came quite early in my story so far. It was actually the second mobile film that I decided to make and the first mobile film that used more than just a phone and a stabilizer. The idea behind Benched was to, just like all my films, get my choreography seen. So I needed something that was short form, that was my choreography on screen, but also wasn't, just a bit of studio work. So I wanted to basically try and tell a story as much as I could in the time that I had with the equipment that I had.
And what made you want to make this with a phone? I mean, you started. What turned you on to making movies or anything like that with the iPhone out of all the cameras that you probably had access to? Not just the phone, right?
Yeah, I mean, I would have had access to other cameras if I decided to, for instance, use friends of mine who work with cameras or work with a, at that time, established professional, editor. But the thing about what I was doing is I was trying to move forward independently, in order to sort of build my choreographic language, my choreographic message, and get it out there. I was really actually doing something that's probably seen more in dance and choreography than might be seen in film, which was kind of persistently, almost stubbornly sticking with everything that I could do myself. And if the outcome wasn't, something that I could use, then that would just be that, really. So that ability to experiment and take a risk like that was something that came from my dancing and my choreography. And that's kind of, you said that I have access to other cameras, but actually I didn't have access to any other cameras of my own. And my experience with Premiere Pro kind of grew out of my when I was at school training. I actually had some experience with music recording, so everything you've seen about my film and my work is actually self-taught as a result of fulfilling a need, rather than training in something long-term and then afterwards kind of making an output there.
And you seem pretty apt at doing things by yourself. And I say that also because for the film festival, you sent in a video salute, a message. And,
Yes, I did.
yeah, and it was just crazy awesome, to be honest with you. It was just wonderful. I had asked you to go ahead and be creative and, just throw what you could my way, and it was just amazing. It was so cool and creative, and you did a lot all by yourself and the other yous.
Yeah, so actually that request for that came at the end of a day when I'd been using that idea, actually. So during the current situation of the lockdown at the moment we have in Scotland during Corona, the Royal Conservatoire of Scotland, where I teach regularly, asked me could I come up with some kind of online either recorded video or Zoom-based task for the dancers at their college. And I'd actually spent the whole day making this task where I sort of set a task. And actually there were a lot more costumes than the ones you see in that salute. But at the time that you'd asked for it, I had everything set up. So I decided to just do another, hour of getting a few bits together for that. So yeah, for those people out there that already know me and have seen that other task, they'll recognize the many me's. And I can actually fit quite a few in before my PC starts to hemorrhage and overheat.
Well, so you really had that down, that whole technique, didn't you?
Yeah, and again, it grew out of experimenting. So I was in the studio choreographing in I think it was 2019. Something that's completely different, wasn't humorous at all. I was just capturing movement, and I had two clips next to each other in Premiere, and I was like, actually, they're mirrored so perfectly with the camera in a fixed position. I wonder if there's a way of putting them together. And so actually I started in a more complicated way. I started using transparency layers to make it look like they're in the same place when actually all I needed to do was crop them down the middle. And so, yeah, things have kind of got easier to produce those type of things, to kind of crop and edge feather those. But yeah, basically it all comes out of dance for me, just like everything that has happened for me so far.
Wow. So share with us a little bit about your dancing, and first of all, I have no idea, but I'm imagining that this was something you were interested in since you were a child, right?
Yeah, so my mother was actually a dancer herself and performer, and she started a school in East London, literally about the time I was born, probably before. So yeah, I was born and was immediately with her all the time, and I got to experience dance from a very, very young age. But I did it alongside my regular studies, so I actually managed to achieve a place at quite a prestigious academic school up to the age of 12, and then at 13 there's some decisions were being made, like, you should maybe consider training as a lawyer. What about your future? And at that age I was like, I have no idea what I want to do. I just know that I don't want to be told you're going to be this. So I left the sort of British private school system, that sort of Eton and the place I was, very similar, that sort of level of education where I was playing rugby, football, cricket, every sport you can name. We had access to every subject. Like, I was being asked to study Latin at 12 years old, which was something that I remember my father was, he was very impressed and telling his family members that I was, studying Latin and doing all this stuff, and I'd be going to university. But I had totally different plans, and so at I think it's 12, 13, I decided to audition and go to a full-time performing arts school, vocational school here in the UK called, at the time it was called the Arts Educational School, Tring Park. And it was in a big park in Tring. And I did, again, as well as all the dancing, I was doing drama, I was doing music, and everything I'd had access to as a child was then taken to that sort of semi-professional vocational training level. And then while I was there, I achieved a place at what was then called the Trinity College of Music. It's now part of Trinity Laban. And people will actually know that without realizing, because every single period drama you've ever seen in film has been shot at the Naval College in Greenwich, which is where that is. So I actually saw film sets and things like this between the ages of 15 and 17, and at the time it didn't occur to me that it would be a good time to start getting some tips and tricks there. So I was studying music, I was studying dance, I was doing all of that, and then I decided to focus on classical ballet. I had a real drive to want to be in a classical ballet company and dance company. And so I did some final year training at the Central School of Ballet in London, which is the only educational institution I went to that's still called the same thing as the time I went there, because this was quite long ago. And then from Central School of Ballet, I managed to get a contract as a classical dancer here at the Scottish Ballet. And so for the past 10 years, I've been dancing at the Scottish Ballet, now as a soloist of the company.
Wow. That's an amazing background. And do you mind if I ask what kind of dance your mom did?
So my mum, she was trained she's very diverse. Versatile is the right word, actually. She can do ballet. She was teaching ballet, tap, jazz, modern, contemporary dance, and anything she couldn't teach herself, she would get in a teacher. So, even her very first school offered drama, offered music. And the reason my music training was so strong is actually a lady called Moira Hartley. She built a music department alongside my mum's dance school that actually was sending kids to big music colleges like the Royal College of Music and Trinity, like I went to. Some, like me, went to the Conservatoire for their sort of Saturday school extra training, but some went on to do full-time music training there. So, yeah, the music training for me, what I use it for now is obviously achieving music rights, selection of music, and being able to talk to composers in their language. So I kind of have that go-between tool there.
So when you choreographed your film, because basically that's what the kind of director that you are when you're creating these films with dancing, right? You're choreographing, right?
Yeah, I mean, so I'm going to say some stuff here that I've never actually really talked about outside of doing it, which is with choreography, I always have been creating, from a very young age. It wasn't even something that I was like considering separate. Every now and then one of my teachers might say, could you make that over there? Could you fill this amount of music with that, in a show, things like this. So it started there, and then it grew into wanting now, after dancing so many prestigious international choreographers' work, I now want to have something to say. I want to get my stuff out there. But what I haven't really talked about is how I capture my work. So for those that have seen some of my other videos and have kind of said, well, how did he move quickly, or is he on rails? What's going on? A lot of the time I'm sliding, slipping, running, jumping with a stabilizer attached to me or in hand. And with my films, I have to choreograph my track through a piece, which in Benched is maybe not so evident. But in some of my other more recent stuff, you'll see that there's a lot of camera movement going on. And again, getting to the thing I've never really talked about, I actually found the inspiration of how I wanted to see dance through big movies like the Avengers and big Marvel films and things like this, the way the action shots are done. For instance, if you look at Avengers Assemble, the big shot where they all assemble for the first time and this big sweeping orbit shot and things like this, these are the kind of visuals that really interest me. And so I've tried to take those and apply them to how I capture dance, because I think it can really enhance the choreography itself. And actually, sometimes some of the choreography is then made the other way, and you think, oh, that will actually look great on camera. And if I do that, I want to see it from this angle. So it's all kind of, merging into this one choreographic filmmaking.
Yeah, it's like a very interesting blend of cinematography and choreography, which is, that's something you master and you have the talent to do because of what you do, right?
Yeah, I never really thought about the sort of cinematic process and looking at a film outside of watching it until I met. I can't remember her first name, but at the time, my teacher, Miss Kim, she and Miss Hayward, they were two teachers I had at Tring that I'd mentioned, and they took my film studies A level. So in the UK, we had something called A levels, and I did 4 of them. And one, because I'd chosen to do so many alongside all the dancing, I needed one that I considered simpler. Of course, once I got into film studies, I had 2 really dedicated and really enthusiastic teachers there, and they obviously took me through the basics in the first year. And in the second year, we really looked in depth at how films are made, what certain shots are designed to do. I mean, very peripheral when compared to someone that might have gone to film school for, I don't know, 3 to 5 years, which I know some people do. But their passion and their drive and their such a deep understanding of different films, with one being really keen on Ridley Scott films, looking at Alien, for example, and how those designs, why those designs were done the way they were. Yeah, it was just new for me at the time. Then I forgot about it. And now at this age, nearly a decade later, it all comes flooding back as I start to look at, well, how do I capture that to reflect this, or what's going to look good about this?
And also in editing, because, I myself, I did a lot of editing for different videos and created montages and things like that. And one of the cool things was finding specific shots, with camera pans going this way, but then you position that in the edit with a camera move going the other way. And it's sort of like the movements of the shots as you're editing are sort of dancing and playing to each other.
Yeah, so movement is a key word you've used there. And I think that when you have an understanding of movement, which is not, there's no stamp of approval that says your understanding of movement is correct. But like my understanding of movement has grown out of obviously my experience in dance companies, and seeing dance in the kind of industry I'm in. And yeah, basically that idea of movement, I often think about movement directors, which is something I'm very interested in doing. You often watch, say you watch a musical film or a film that's got a dance sequence like La La Land, for example. You kind of can see when it's working and you can see when it's not. And some people understand, everyone understands whether they like it or not. But some people obviously understand what is it about that shot and that movement that's gelling. And a lot of it is to do with the synchronization of the dance, the choreography, and the camera movement. And I think that there's an understanding there that maybe, I don't know if it's undervalued or overvalued, who knows, because I'm not an employed movement choreographer yet. However, I think that there's a skill there that's kind of developing, for me at least, and I'm interested in, pursuing it.
Oh, I can almost promise you that the more and more that you do this, you may end up in Hollywood with an award in your hand for this, because you're talking about different things and your experience in all of them. They're all very well connected to the cinematography and how you envision the complete artwork that you're creating visually, which is in your films. And as a camera person, myself, when my first camera was a big VHS camera back when I was a teenager. And my mom is from Spain, and she performed a lot flamenco music, and I got to sort of grow up around flamenco dancers. And you're familiar, obviously, with flamenco, right?
Yeah, I actually part-time lived with a flamenco dancer at one point who was the boyfriend of my flatmate. So yeah, I got really into flamenco at one point.
It's a very, very expressive form of dancing. And one of the things that I remember, my first paid gig was actually capturing them in the studio. It was a man and a woman, a couple that were actually married, dancing. And they paid me $50 to go and spend a few hours with them and capture shots of them dancing. And I didn't have a video editor or anything like that, so I just captured everything very carefully and then gave them the tape, right? But the one thing that I learned was how to move the camera, sort of have a sense of when they were going down to their feet to doing their footwork.
Mm-hmm.
And when they would open up, and you can tell there's a connection between the music itself, the guitars and the clapping and all that, and you see when they're going to open up. And then I would sort of go up with the camera from their feet and start to move it slowly up towards their hand and arm movements. And I can see with what you're doing that you would probably get really good with that. And the fact that you're using a mobile phone, which is very light in that aspect, would give you a lot of freedom to move around in the choreography of your filming.
Yeah, I think that what you're saying is exactly right, and can kind of bring us on to what makes mobile filmmaking, for me particularly, something that is kind of essential. I wouldn't have been able to do what I've done probably with the budget, especially the budget I have, but also with the equipment. The amount I'm moving, it's very intense. That's why I need the right stabilization and the right equipment that's actually quite hard wearing. Like, you've got to be prepared. You've got to be prepared to drop it, and I have. Basically, what you've kind of talked about there with VHS reminds me of how I kind of talk about and think about mobile filmmaking, which is my background is in live performance. So in a live performance, you get one chance to say it. Mm-hmm. Everything needs to be as right as it can be. And that teaches you that perfect is kind of unachievable in that sense. It's not something you even want to be aiming to achieve once you've had that kind of performing experience. And I think that the reason mobile filmmaking works for me is that there is that live element. On the mobile, even with a great app like Filmic Pro, everything is much more automated than a bigger video capture camera. So you kind of have more work to do in the sense that you got to get it right. You got to get everything, as close to what you're looking for in the shoot as you can, because in edit, although you're not limited and what you've got in your pocket is an incredible device for the size, obviously with working with mobile, you can have exposure issues, or is Filmic Pro, have you set everything right for the shoot, that, the same things you'd have with other, video equipment. But I think that you need to be, at least in my experience and speaking to other video editors, you need to get more right at the time of the shoot. So I respond well to that live kind of element. And that's kind of what's led me to actual, achieving professional engagements with larger companies like the BBC, because they've seen that I don't really crack under that pressure of, despite having a lower budget in the sense that I'm working with all my own equipment and mobile, I'm still trying to aim for this, high level of output and as pristine as possible edited film, which is obviously, a very difficult thing to achieve. And I'd love to work with a Hollywood budget, like you've talked about earlier, to see what the outcome would be.
Well, definitely, I can tell you that there's a lot of respect and honor in that, in someone who films in that way, that doesn't always think, well, I can probably do something with that later in editing, or that can be fixed in post, or that can be altered, and to really shoot in that way, because a lot of people underestimate what they can do in post and how well everything can come together. But if you do your very, very best while you're shooting as if it's a live performance, that's the best way to shoot and to always shoot. And it's not about being a perfectionist. It's just about, again, with your background and everything like that, like I said earlier, it takes persistence and experience. And the more experience you have, the more comfortable and the more confidence that you have behind the camera and how that's going to turn out.
Yeah, and also, it's dishonest in a way for me, and that's being a purist in the kind of dance sense. My experience as a dancer, I've actually done a lot of shoots. I've been involved in quite a lot of recorded dance, and you never feel like what you did was either your best, or you hear them talking about using a take that you didn't like, or once you've had the thing mixed down and cut, it doesn't look like what you did on the day, and obviously there's situations where that's great, especially if you're doing something that's heavily edited. But if, like me, I've got quite a few long running one shots, you want the best take, and you also want the people behind the camera to really be capturing the best elements of it. So a lot of the dancers I work with, they kind of trust me, because it's quite a big deal for them to let someone independently put something out where they're dancing. And, a lot of them volunteer to take part. And, almost none of the dancers in any of my independent stuff are paid in that way, just simply because of budget, and simply because they wouldn't want to be, because they're just seeing it as an extension of working with a choreographer. But having actually said that, looking at these here now, I think everyone since 2018 has received something for the work that they've done. So I take that one back. Everyone is paid. But obviously, you mentioned Hollywood earlier. The kind of money people earn for even a 10-minute sequence would be, in the region of 1,000 times factor of what I can pay for something. So yeah. People wouldn't be dancing my stuff if they didn't didn't trust me to put it out at that level. And I think that, I think it would be great to change the way things are done in that communication between the dance and the filmmaking, because again, my experience has always kind of been negative as a dancer, whereas I feel like I'm getting some positive responses from the people I've been working with so far, at least to my face.
Well, it is a trust issue, and I know I always say this, and these when I talk to people all the time about filmmaking and such, that it's you have the crew members, but also the actors, and they become family because of the trust, and once you find a team, right, that you work well with together. There's a magical connection in that you all trust each other. And if you can get 4 or 5 people that work well together and trust each other and know that each one is going to play their part as best as possible, then the output from everyone is great. And then the end result is fantastic most of the time, right?
Yeah, I mean, I presented this huge value proposition to the BBC, which is why they engaged me a couple of times already, because they seemed quite surprised. As a dancer, it didn't surprise me, because I know many dancers that can do so many things when they put their mind to it. It's a very unique work ethic when you've committed to doing that as full time. Whereas the BBC, they were very surprised that I was going to be choreographing, dealing with the set and the layout of the scene, capturing, editing, directing. What I consider the best example of my work is a film I made called Flight, which can be found, on my website, or can be found on YouTube under my name. And with Flight, I was running up and down the stairs of the headquarters of BBC Scotland. And on that day, you said about having a team. Whereas my team lives in my backpack, my Nomad backpack, which I use to carry all my stuff. And so I arrived, unpacked everything. I actually expected that I was going to be receiving a team from the BBC. That didn't materialize. And so I ended up doing every aspect of the film, including the edit afterwards as well, which again, I wasn't sure how that was going to be. And they said, well, if you can do it, you do it. So I kind of did it all. And it was such an amazing opportunity and a great way to showcase what I could do that then when I had later interactions with the BBC, they were like, oh, we can take the edit. The fact that I could at least cut the clips and say, well, this is how I think it should look, that was a huge time saver and also a huge value proposition for them. But as a dancer, any dancer that's been through what I've been through in being in a classical company or contemporary dance company, it kind of comes as standard that you need to be offering as much as you can, as efficiently and economically as possible. So yeah, in that sense, if anyone is listening that needs someone to do everything, I'm the one-man band kind of situation. I'd love a team though. It would be a dream to have a team, to have someone to work alongside, like you're talking about, to have like, I could concentrate on the movement direction and have someone I trust with the camera, or someone that handles the edit and they've worked with me and know what I'm kind of wanting to see. That would be an awesome outcome.
Well, that may happen because some of our listeners may want to take you up on that after, seeing the film, seeing your work, listening to you speak, and knowing your experience with all of this. You'd be the one to partner up with for sure. Tell me a little bit more about the music in your film. And by the way, just so our listeners know, we will put a link to that film Flight that you were just talking about.
Sure, so that'd be amazing.
So that people can see it. Tell me a little bit about the music that you use, if you don't mind, for these films.
Sure. Okay. So this particular film, the one I entered for your film festival, was Minuet for a Cheap Piano No. 1, which was written by Dustin O'Halloran and Adam Wiltsey. I think I'm saying those names correctly. I apologize if not. And it's performed by A Winged Victory for the Sullen. I was actually having this conversation yesterday with someone who deals with music copyright, and that's my approach to how I achieve music rights. That I am punching above my weight with some of the deals that I've managed to do with the labels. And the first thing that the guy I was speaking to yesterday said, when you say the labels, you mean the publisher. And I don't mean the publisher, I mean the label. So my advice to anyone in filmmaking of any kind that's looking for music, approach the artist first if you can. And if you can't get an answer from the artist, go to the label. Because what happens is that you're bringing them into the process. The second thing I'm advising on this is to tell them as much as you can about the project that you're trying to achieve. And if you're very lucky, they may start to think that either they're part of it or they came up with it, which is a great situation to achieve. And often it can become the case. So I have to say, Erase Tape Music Publishing, who are the ones that gave me the rights for this particular piece of music, they really got on board. I explained the idea. They suggested artists, but luckily for them, I'd come with a specific artist in mind. A lot of the music choices I make come out of researching a particular subject. So I don't go out and say, oh, I want something upbeat or I want something from this particular artist. I research, like, for instance, Scottish composers or music from a particular area of Europe, and that's how I kind of come to my decision on what I use. And then, as I said, the second part is convincing a label or an artist and then eventually the publisher that what you're doing is something that is a good reflection of their artist and is something that would be worth them giving you financial support towards. So all my music rights are paid for. I don't ever put anything out that isn't fully licensed or under the fair use and all of that. And that's been probably the most expensive part of all this filmmaking has been paying for music rights so far.
Yeah, and there's different types of licensing that you use for films. A lot of people who go on the internet looking for royalty-free music or whatever don't realize that. But as a music artist, you want to know what your music is going to be, how it's going to show. For example, there's a difference between using a little bit of your music or a song for a transition or in the background, or if it's going to drive an entire scene, or in your case, the video, right?
Yeah, I mean, and also the other thing that the label or the publisher responds to is your suggestion of what you would want to pay. So, a lot of the times I go with the figure of the last piece of music I used, and I always try and improve that figure. So the figure started at X back in 2018, and I've managed to bring it down to Y as my sort of suggested figure so far. But it depends on the artist. There's a particular artist that I had a film for, an unreleased film actually, and for a 2-minute work, they were looking at £1,500 to £2,000 for a 6-month release, which is completely different. That's two and a half. I think it's about $2,500, but that's completely different music rights situation to the other artists I work with, and actually one of the more expensive. But again, for that artist is very cheap. It's actually a really good deal. No organisation would be offered a price that low for the particular artist I was trying to get the deal with. So yeah, you do need to be quite hot on that topic, and what am I trying to say? You need to be quite engaged with the current situation there. It's an ever-changing situation as well with social media, with the way music artists are paid. So you kind of have to be up to speed on that stuff, because you don't want your video taken down, and you don't want a festival to have to say we can't show your film. I'd actually just say that one of my recent films, which was filmed on March the 12th in New York, called Love Stained, which people will realize is a very specific time, because 3 days later I was on a plane back to the UK earlier than planned. I actually managed to engage with Hope Thaler, who's the artist behind Love Stained, first, and then her label as well. And as a result, I managed to get a very good deal on the release, and where I could release and for how long. It's an important part of the process.
Well, yeah, most definitely it is. And especially, I mean, we're now in a situation where theatrical releases of films, right? Where, like, for example, in our film festival, they would have shown live there to the audience there, let's just say that scenario, but not necessarily gone online, maybe, right? And
Yeah.
we're looking at a scenario now where a lot more films are going to go online. And that's something to consider, because there's more option, and maybe not the artist, would see it. They're obviously, if you put it on YouTube, they have their robots going through everything. But in another scenario where it's not, it could be someone they know.
Yeah, I think there's the opinion on the current state of music licensing, and then there's the reality. And unfortunately, right now, if you want to put something out on at a professional standard, where you're able to, show it internationally and all of that, unfortunately, you have to deal with the right now. And the way things should be are not necessarily the way things are. But as a dancer, it's a very strange situation, because when I work with, if a choreographer is making a work with me involved, they ask you for help, they ask you for inspiration. If a piece wouldn't get made the way it ends up looking if you're not involved in that process, and a choreographer doesn't copyright your movement. And again, it's a very different situation when it comes to intellectual property, and when it comes to music rights and copyright and licensing, when compared to my history in dance, my experience in dance. So I personally am trying to get everything right. I'm trying to do things by the book. Whether that's the best approach, I don't know. But yeah, it's an ever-changing situation. I'd actually give a shout out to Coil, which is a distributed ledger-based platform, which is trying to change the way the internet is monetized. And if anyone listening is interested in trying a new way to monetize their film, Coil is in its very early stages. So yeah, coil.com, a great thing to have a look at as a creative.
How do you spell that?
COIL.
Okay.
And it's using distributed ledger technology built on the Ripple XRP cryptocurrency to make micropayments to artists. And it's kind of a subscription-based model of the internet, essentially, which people don't realize often. Paying for the internet sounds like a awful thing, but actually you'd probably be saving yourself a lot of time and money because you'd no longer be seeing any adverts and getting the credit card every now and then when you see something that you want or need.
Well, in any case, we are all artists, right? And we can support each other. Film is the one art where all the other art is combined in sort of a multimedia type of work or project. In your case, though, definitely music is very important. I mean, you don't really, I mean, you can dance to dead air, of course, silent dancing, if that's a thing.
That's definitely a thing.
Yep. But it's good to have music if you're going to show a dancer on a film. The other part of this, of your choreography, though, that I want to talk about is the acting in that dance, the expression.
Yeah, so working with Jamie Reid, he's also a dancer of the Scottish Ballet. He's a younger dancer. He is from Glasgow, and he really encapsulates what it is to be an artist working in Glasgow, because he's so knowledgeable in every different part of the city, and more widely so the country of Scotland. He's he's not typecast, but he is a Scottish guy. And it was important for me that I then chose a location that kind of matched that. So Kelvingrove Park is this rather dramatic and recognizable backdrop for those that know it. And that's kind of another character that appears in the work. You've kind of got Jamie, you've got Kelvingrove Park, and you've actually got the bench that he's on, and the bench takes a beating, so it's also kind of another character. But yeah, acting and dancing and living a character, that's something that my experience in dance and the company I've danced for, that's an essential thing, really. And when I thought about my response to the music and what I was seeing, these kind of themes around isolation, around perhaps loss or depression or loneliness, these were things that Jamie immediately understood and identified what I was going for, and he did a great job on the day. Actually, he did way beyond what I was expecting, because there's only so much that the camera work and the choreography can do. The kind of icing on the cake, the cherry on the top, is when the artist you're working with responds and engages with the idea in that way, and he did in a big way. And I actually what I do, which I don't know is if it's like other filmmaking, I always do test runs. I do test shoots, because I'm creating in the studio. I can set the studio up as the scene that I'm using. And it's actually, you'd be very surprised how flexible you can be in that area, because, if you've got a 3-level film, for example, or you've got a big long walkway that you're planning on shooting on, you can recreate that in the studio. And it's something that as dancers, we all have to do anyway, because we can't always have our set in the studio with us when we're working on big ballets and things. So Jamie knew that. So and I understood that. So again, because we're on the same page, he understood that what we were doing in the studio was basically what we needed to be doing at the shoot as well. So he was well prepped and comfortable, and the whole thing, actually finding the location as well was very organic. It was kind of led by, well, if this is A, how do we then move to B? If this is B, how do we get to C? And I think that his acting in it was part of that process, really. It kind of just made sense for him.
It was a story.
Yeah, it is a story that a lot of people ask me some really strangely detailed questions about, like, who is he on the phone to? Or has he just come from a breakup? Or has he had enough of his flatmate? That's the whole kind of point. There's an ambiguity there that you can put your own story on top of it. You can decide for yourself, really. And I don't really know what Jamie was thinking for his specific, inspiration. But it's definitely, you've seen people in that situation. You see them all the time. And a lot of the time, they just need someone speaking to them and talking to them. And we had some runners and some cyclists going past and stopping, not seeing me and thinking he was going through something. So, that meant it was kind of a strange sort of site-specific piece at one point because it was working in that way.
Actually, now that you mentioned that, that's true because you're shooting with a phone, so it was very ambiguous, right?
Yeah, and it was very early. It was like we shot between like 5 a.m. And 7 a.m. And I'm not an early riser, and Jamie definitely is an early riser. So it was like, those themes of isolation and frustration were there from the beginning. Anyway, that anxiety was in the background at 5 a.m. for sure.
Well, I love this. Well, in a way, it's like abstract art, right? So it's up to. I said this a long time ago to someone, and they almost fell on the floor laughing. But I think it's the way that I said it, not so much what I said. But it was basically the definition of art. When you go to a museum or something, you see a piece of art, and some people look at it and they go, "Ew." They just don't like it. And other people are just mesmerized by it. And in this case, what I think it's really cool that you were just talking about is the fact that there is a story there, but it's up for interpretation, right?
Yeah, I mean, what I'm so pleased about, and despite that film being one of my earliest, has had one of the best responses, is that the thing that's clear is what he's feeling. So the actual details of what he's going through are up for debate, but it's very clear that he's frustrated. It's very clear that he's anxious and that he's isolated. It's also very clear that his phone is adding to this problem, which, as a mobile filmmaker is an ironic point to be getting across. Yeah. The irony of throwing his phone in the river at the end is not lost on me. But, that's really, and you said, some people might respond with a big ew, and that's great too. Any response is what you kind of be trying to achieve there. So,
spoken like a true artist, Jamiel. I wondered if there's anything that that I am missing that you'd like to talk about. For example, people you'd like to mention and thank for the outcome of Jamiel Laurence.
Well, yeah, definitely. Actually, I'd like to thank Jamie himself because he actually watched the film festival with me live. We loved your online output this year. So yeah, obviously, thank you to Jamie for dancing the work. Moondog Labs, who provide the anamorphic lens, they've done a great job in supporting me. And I started as a customer, and now I'm an affiliate, and I'm associated with them, and they give me the great rates, but also they feature my work and things like this. A massive thank you to Apple, who in 2019 decided to start supporting me with a bit of technology. So they've been sending me phones, which is great. That's Apple Europe. Yeah, thank you to Cranky and to Erase Tapes for all the support with the music rights. And actually, do you know who I should thank? I should thank Zian because they actually awarded me a prize 2 days after you awarded me a prize for an isolation creation I'd created, and they're sending me a Weeble-S stabilizer, which I have no idea if it will work with my phone, but I'm going to find a way. But yeah, there's quite a lot. But you realise when you go through this process of wanting to do something new and trying to achieve in that area, you start to pick up, deep support from people early on, and you only realise how deep that support is when you get to about now. 2 years later, these people are the people you're relying on, really. So yeah, without all this technology assistance and continuing sort of encouragement from these companies, it would be a lot harder to do.
Actually, share a little bit about your mobile isolation creations.
Yeah, so as I said earlier, I just produced Love Stained. I got back to the UK earlier than planned. We were touring with Scottish Ballet at the Joyce Theatre in New York. All the shows are cancelled, so we flew back one day before they then said they were cancelling all travel. And I spent the next 3 weeks. I spent the first 3 weeks being ill, actually.
Oh no!
I was pretty unwell, but we won't talk about that because it's fine now. And I didn't really know what I wanted to say. I was finding my lack of freedom, although it's kind of a selfish thing to say in the light of all the safety things. I was finding my lack of freedom very frustrating. The media was creating a lot of fear, which they can do when they feel like it, I guess. So I couldn't really decide what I wanted to say. I was seeing dancers output things. Every dancer I know was teaching. Every dancer I know had to go at creating, which is super positive, but at the time was frustrating because why didn't I have anything I could do or say? And I was listening to Daft Punk randomly on a shuffle on my phone, and I was like,
one of my favorite bands.
Well, they were then telling me what to do. They were saying, push it, shove it, turn it, twist it, lock it. And I was like, do you know what? If I can't find a way in, let them lead me. So, yeah, by producing a 30-second clip there, that became the first in my series of isolation creations. Then my second creation, which is again done in my living room, although a lot of people don't seem to understand that because my wide angle lens makes it look massive, but I can assure you it's only 4 or 5 meters wide. My second creation ended up being a bit more substantial, and that was with my partner, Constance Devaney, who's a principal at Scottish Ballet and who lives with me, obviously, as my partner. And we ended up producing a nearly 2-minute work there that I think I'm going to enter for quite a few things now.
Nice.
On 2 by 2 meters of dance floor. I decided I need to be doing something at the moment. I need to be outputting. And by deciding to not only do that, but also edit for a lot of my friends who are in isolation, a lot of choreographer friends of mine who've kind of in this situation turned around and gone, how to do something about this video stuff. Can you help? Working with them. I actually cut something yesterday for a friend of mine, Constant Vigier, who I'll name drop here. You'll see a link in my Instagram story. I cut something for him that I helped him create, and we talked about how could he use his phone to, make it look like he's not stuck in his living room also. Me and many other choreographers at this time are pushing out in all directions, and I just decided to formalize mine by calling it a series, which will hopefully mean that I'll keep outputting, we don't seem to be coming out of this situation in Scotland anytime soon. I've got about at least another month. So, watch that space for the next one, basically.
So maybe this will be like a web series, huh?
Well, having won the Xeon stabilizer from the first one and having attracted attention with the second, one of the executives at Scottish Ballet actually emailed me and said that this lockdown seems to suit me. Maybe they should lock me up more often. But people respond differently, and a lot of people have been adapting and kind of narrating their lockdown in that way. Whereas the thing for me to do is to try and do what I always have done and not let that, it's just another creative restriction, a challenge that you've got to face. And so I'm hoping that my work doesn't look too much like it was filmed in lockdown, which is, we'll see how people respond to it, I guess. Yeah,
no, definitely. Well, I want to ask you something I almost forgot. I want to play a game with you.
Let's go for it.
All right. And actually, now I'm curious. So I'm going to put you on the spot here. And now I've got a timer.
Right.
So don't worry about timing this. But I'm going to give you 20 seconds. Why did my phone want to do 28 minutes? I don't know. Hold on a second here. That would have taken a while. You would have been here till tomorrow.
I'm a bit nervous. It's just a history question.
Right? But what I want in 20 seconds is your favorite bands of music. So we've been talking about music anyway. So, and you just mentioned Daft Punk, so you can leave that one out.
Okay.
So, are you ready?
Yep, I'm ready.
Get set and go.
Okay, so we're definitely going to have Aerosmith in there. He's on every drive to work. I absolutely love Gabriel Fauré, who's obviously a composer, not a band, but we'll keep him in there. The Beatles, massive influence. Charlie Parker on the sax. I play the sax, so that's something that influences me. Oh no, is that it? That's 20 seconds.
That's it. It goes fast, doesn't it?
It does go really fast, and I seem to just add all this extra information to all the things that I say anyway. So.
I should have. So for anyone who is listening, whoever plans to be in the podcast and get put on the spot, list them all, and then we can talk about them later.
Yeah.
Tell me it's still. Hold on. Go away. Okay. Sorry about that.
Okay.
The alarm of the apocalypse. I have that particular alarm, because it reminds me of Return of the Living Dead.
Yeah, and it is the apocalypse, so
It kind of is, isn't it? God, we are living, get your opinion on this. I mean, we're living in a time, right? In many ways, we are very lucky because we get to experience this firsthand, as opposed to, sitting in a theater watching it, right? But in another way, I mean, it's just crazy. I think, what do you think they're going to say in about? Okay, we'll all be dead and gone, but in 100 years from now, right? When they look back through time, do you think they'll pick this particular time in our history out of all our history and look at this and say, wow, look what these people had to go through and how much the world has changed? Or do you think this really won't be as big a deal as it seems to us right now?
Yeah, I mean, so a few times in my life, I've had this thing thrown at me called a Johari window, which is to do with, for those that don't know, it's how you see yourself, how others see you, how you want other people to see you, and the unknown, which is, that which you can't know. And I think this kind of applies to this situation. Everything is unknown, and to worry about it and to allow fear to kind of generate as a result is not a good thing to be doing. So my advice to anyone, and the way I feel about this situation right now, is to keep doing what you're doing and keep being true to what it is that you want to be putting out there creatively, whether that's just what you do every day. Obviously there's disruption. You can't go outside, you can't travel in the same way that you would usually, but you got to face those challenges down, and you've got to kind of just keep pushing through in that way. There's something that I think Mark Twain said, which is those who would trade their freedom for their safety deserve neither. And I think that kind of applies to this. Obviously there's safety, be safe, do the social distancing as required for this thing, but don't trade your freedom and put yourself in your own prison of worry and fear, because that's a negative place to be as a person, really, but also as a choreographer. I wouldn't be able to make anything I make.
It's true, and we don't want to limit ourselves to the point to where, I was just thinking about last year. Last year life was so completely different. I mean, for a film festival, just one event, we were hugging, we were doing selfies. I don't even know if we'll be able to do selfies anytime soon, but
it'd be very difficult to dance and partner someone without being able to touch them, which I don't think's ever going to be a reality for dance. It'd be like taking the guitar away from the guitarist or the piano away from the pianist. It wouldn't be possible to dance in that sense. And it's our job as choreographers and dancers to kind of tread that line between how do we get back to where we were, and how do we stay true to what dance is in that sense. So, yeah, I'll be interested to see who goes in what direction after that, because I think there's a sense that everyone's going to scatter and approach this situation very differently to how they did before.
Yeah, and I see creatively, I see an opportunity here to make the world a better place, but to not lose what we've had that we really should cherish, which is the humanity of all of us to connect. And that does include our distance from one another. We need to be able to do that.
Yeah, and don't be afraid to ask these questions. There's a lot of social distancing going on in conversations, which is a very strange thing for me as someone that often says what they think. There's a lot of don't say anything against this narrative, or don't question it or anything. And the only way that we can make things better is to be, you know, objectively questioning and considering our opinions in that way. So we've gone on a COVID tangent here, but COVID tangent. But yeah, it's a strange situation, and I'm trying to just create as I always have.
Yeah, we'll continue to keep creating. In the meantime, time will pass, and this too shall pass, to quote somebody out there who said that.
Yeah, and I hope to be in San Diego in person next time. I'm very much looking forward to visiting, hopefully, at a future festival. So
yeah, no, most definitely, it'll be great. No matter what, we have to. I mean, at least get the filmmakers from this year's. How was just really quick? Don't dwell on this too much, but I know you said you watched the film festival and everything. With was it with Jamie?
yeah, so we watched, well, Jamie at his house and me at my place. We stayed in contact via FaceTime and watched it together.
Nice.
And we really enjoyed it. And it's the first one that we've been at together, or that I've actually been at all, because I actually was in the New York Mobile Film Festival as a selection, and my flight got cancelled the day before. I was literally doing an overnight stopover so I could be at this festival. I was very excited. It was the first international trip as a result of my own work. And the French decided to do an air traffic control strike, which cancelled my flight. So I'd never actually been to any of the festivals, even though that ones that I'd achieved awards at, or finalist places. So you're actually my very first film festival experience where I've put something in myself. So yeah, you can consider me your first ever online mobile film festival goer as a creative artist that's been in several film festivals.
And this was our first virtual film festival too.
So for me, it worked great, because if I wasn't able to come to San Diego, which I'd been told, I'd kind of been given the heads up from Scottish Ballet that I could, even though we were performing Swan Lake at the time.
Yeah.
But yeah, it, even if I hadn't been able to, having it online actually really helps. And I do hope that even when it's live, that, you know, a stream of the event would be super.
Cool. Well, that's good to know. You never know.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, listen, it's been a pleasure talking to you. And I would ask you at this point, I think, to be honest, our discussion was wonderful. And I hope our listeners got a lot of nutrition for the soul and the art and the dream and inspiration from it. So now I would say for you to say goodbye to our listeners.
Yep, goodbye everyone. Well, not goodbye, because I hope to see you all soon. Please do follow me on all my social medias. It's under my name, Jamiel Laurence, everywhere you can find me. Wonderful. And yeah, thank you for having me.
You're very welcome.